When billionaire Elias Mercer flew home on his private jet after 7 years away, he expected his mother to be waiting behind the gates of the mountain estate he paid to restore. Instead, he found her name missing from the household records, her bedroom stripped bare, and a gray wolf standing at the edge of the driveway with a torn piece of her old red scarf caught between its teeth. The mansion was warm, the servants were silent, his mother was gone, and the animal looked like it had come to accuse him. 7 years. That was how long he had been gone. Not completely gone, he told himself. He had called. He had sent money. He had paid every bill his mother could possibly have. The estate had been renovated from top to bottom. New roofs, new staff quarters, new security systems, a private nurse, landscapers, drivers, everything Miriam Mercer could ever need. At least, that was what he believed. At 42, Elias had built an empire that stretched across continents, hotels, energy projects, real estate, the kind of success magazines loved to write about. But none of it mattered during the flight home. All he could think about was his mother. She was 71 now. The last time he had seen her in person, her hair had only begun turning gray. Now, 7 years had disappeared. 7 years of birthdays, 7 years of holidays, 7 years of promises that he would visit soon. The guilt sat quietly in his chest. He pushed it away. He would make it right. The plane landed shortly after noon. A black SUV waited on the private runway. The driver greeted him warmly, but something felt off immediately. Too formal, too rehearsed. As if everyone had prepared for his arrival. Everyone except his mother. "Mrs. Mercer didn't come?" Elias asked as they loaded his bags. The driver hesitated, only for a second. "Mr. Nolan said she wasn't feeling well today." Elias frowned. His half-brother Nolan had been managing the estate for years. Not feeling well enough to see her son come home after 7 years? The driver looked away. "I wouldn't know, sir." The answer lingered in Elias's mind during the entire drive. The Mercer estate appeared exactly as he remembered it. Stone walls, iron gates, pine forests surrounding the property. The mansion looked perfect. Too perfect. Fresh paint, perfectly trimmed hedges, not a single leaf out of place. Yet, the moment he stepped inside, he felt something cold beneath the polished surface. The house was beautiful, but it didn't feel alive. Staff members greeted him. They smiled. They welcomed him back, but none of them seemed genuinely happy to see him. And every time he mentioned Miriam, their expressions tightened. "Where's my mother?" The question followed him from room to room. Nobody answered directly. Some claimed she was resting. Others said she had gone away for a few days. One housekeeper simply lowered her eyes and walked away. By late afternoon, irritation had turned into concern. Elias climbed the staircase toward his mother's bedroom. The door stood open. He stepped inside, then stopped. The room was wrong. Everything was wrong. The photographs were gone. The books were gone. The quilts she loved were missing. Even the framed painting she had kept beside her bed for decades had disappeared. The room looked less like a bedroom and more like a guest suite waiting for a stranger. A chill moved through him. He walked to the dresser. Empty. The closet, half empty. No personal items. No sign of a woman who had supposedly lived there only days ago. Footsteps approached behind him. Nolan stood in the doorway. 40 years old. Perfect suit. Perfect smile. Perfect timing. "Elias?" "Nolan." The brothers stared at each other. "Where's Mom?" Nolan sighed. The sigh of a man already tired of a conversation. "She's staying at a wellness lodge for a while." Elias blinked. "A wellness lodge?" "She's been confused lately." "What does that mean?" Nolan stepped into the room. She started imagining things. Wandering. Talking about wolves and the forest. The doctors suggested a break. "What doctors?" "Let's not do this today." Elias's jaw tightened. "I've been home for less than 3 hours, and nobody can tell me where my mother is." Nolan's smile vanished. "You're overreacting." The silence between them hardened. Finally, Nolan checked his watch. "We'll talk tonight." Then he walked away, leaving Elias alone in the empty room. The sun had nearly disappeared when Elias stepped outside. The mountain air felt colder than he remembered. He walked toward the driveway, trying to clear his head. That was when he saw it. A gray wolf. standing perfectly still near the tree line, watching him. Its fur was dirty, one front leg looked injured, and hanging from its mouth was a strip of faded red fabric. Elias froze. He recognized it instantly. His mother owned dozens of scarves, but only one exactly like that. A red wool scarf she had worn every winter for nearly 20 years. The wolf stared directly at him, then slowly turned away, not running, not fleeing, almost waiting. Elias found himself moving forward, step after step toward the woods, toward the animal. The wolf disappeared between the trees. Elias followed. The fading daylight turned the forest gray. The snow crunched beneath his boots. Then he saw something glint beneath a thin layer of ice. He knelt down, brushed away the snow, and felt his stomach drop. Lying frozen in the dirt was Miriam Mercer's medical bracelet. Elias stared at the bracelet in his palm until the cold began to burn through his gloves. Miriam Mercer. The letters were small, scratched into the metal plate beside her medical alert information. Her heart medication, her allergy notes. The emergency contact that still listed Elias as first, even after all the years he had been gone. He closed his fingers around it. For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The wolf had vanished between the pines, leaving only a disturbed trail in the snow, and that strip of red scarf caught on a low branch. Elias stepped forward, but the trees thickened fast ahead of him. The daylight was almost gone, and the Montana cold came down hard once the sun slipped behind the ridge. He knew enough to understand that chasing a wounded wolf into the dark without gear would be stupid. Still, every part of him wanted to keep going. His mother's bracelet was in his hand. That made every calm answer in the house feel like a lie. He turned back toward the mansion with the bracelet clenched so tightly that the metal edge pressed into his palm. The house glowed in the distance, warm and golden behind its tall windows. It looked like comfort from the outside. It looked like safety. But now, as Elias walked toward it, all he could feel was a growing sense of dread. Back inside, Elias confronted Nolan again. The Wellness Lodge? What's the name of it? Nolan hesitated. It's a private facility. They value discretion. Discretion from her own son? Elias's voice was sharp. I found her medical bracelet in the woods, Nolan, and a wolf had her scarf. Nolan's face went pale. That's impossible. She's safe. Safe where? Tell me the truth. The brothers stood inches apart, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Nolan finally broke eye contact. She left. She wanted to be alone. She's been difficult. Difficult enough to abandon her home and her family? Elias scoffed. And what about the wolves she's supposedly imagining? You know she's always loved them. Nolan remained silent, his perfect facade cracking. Elias spent the next few hours making calls. He contacted local hospitals, private clinics, even a few wilderness retreats. No Miriam Mercer. He then called his corporate attorney in Chicago, explaining the situation in clipped, urgent tones. I need you to dig into everything related to the Mercer estate. Financials, property deeds, any recent transactions, and anything involving my mother's medical records. And do it yesterday. The attorney, a seasoned professional, sensed the gravity in Elias's voice. Consider it done. While waiting for information, Elias decided to search the estate himself. He started with the staff quarters, hoping to find someone less guarded than Nolan. He found Mrs. Bell, the longtime housekeeper, in the laundry room. She was an older woman, her hands gnarled from years of work, her eyes kind but weary. Mrs. Bell, where is my mother? He asked gently. She wrung a dishcloth in her hands, avoiding his gaze. I can't say, Mr. Elias. Why not? Are you afraid of Nolan? She flinched, confirming his suspicion. He told us not to speak of it, said it would upset her. Upset her, or upset him? Elias pressed. Mrs. Bell looked around nervously, then whispered, she never wanted to leave. She loved this house. A tear traced a path down her wrinkled cheek. The wolf stayed when people walked away. Elias's heart ached. This answer felt painfully human, not heroic, not dramatic, just real. People protected themselves when powerful families controlled their livelihoods. He understood that. He hated it, but he understood it. The call ended 10 minutes later. When he finally reached the estate gates, dusk had already fallen. The mansion lights glowed against the dark mountains. His phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from the county office. The final batch of requested files. Elias parked immediately, opened the attachment, scrolled through dozens of pages, survey maps, ownership records, attorney correspondence. Then one document stopped him cold. It wasn't attached to the property file. Someone had placed it there accidentally or intentionally. A handwritten note. Recent. Signed by Miriam. Only 6 words. If Elias ever comes home. The rest of the page had been torn away. Elias stared at the torn sentence on his phone screen. If Elias ever comes home. Nothing after it. No explanation. No signature beyond the familiar handwriting he already recognized. Just 6 unfinished words. The missing half felt deliberate, like someone had wanted the message hidden before it reached him. Snow drifted across the windshield as he sat motionless inside the SUV. Then he opened the rest of the attached files. One by one. Slowly. Methodically. The businessman in him took over. Emotion could wait. Evidence could not. Most of the documents were routine property records. Survey maps. Tax statements. Legal correspondence. But buried near the end of the file packet was something unexpected. A letter. Not addressed to him. Addressed to Miriam. The sender was a law firm in Helena. The date was 4 months old. Elias opened it. The contents immediately tightened his chest. The attorneys represented a development company interested in acquiring land along the northern ridge. Luxury cabins, private ski access, high-end vacation properties. Projected value nearly $80 million. Elias leaned back slowly. Now he understood why the land mattered. This was not a small transaction. This was the kind of deal that changed lives. Or destroyed them. He continued reading. The law firm referenced multiple failed attempts to secure Miriam's approval. Failed attempts. Not negotiations. Not completed agreements. Failed attempts. Meaning she had refused. More than once. Elias immediately forwarded the entire file package to a corporate attorney he trusted in Chicago. Then he added a short message. Review everything. Confidential. Urgent. He hit send. For the first time since arriving home, he felt like he was doing something useful. Not reacting. Not guessing. Building. Preparing. The mansion felt even colder when he returned inside. Nolan was waiting in the library. A glass of whiskey sat untouched beside him. The television was on mute. Financial news rolled across the screen. Nolan looked up when Elias entered. You've been busy. Elias closed the door behind him. So have you. Neither man smiled. Nolan gestured toward a chair. Elias remained standing. I spoke with county records. A flicker crossed Nolan's face. Gone instantly. I also spoke with former staff. Another flicker. People say a lot of things. People say Mom opposed the ridge sale. Silence. Nolan rose slowly. This isn't about Mom. Then tell me what it's about. It's about survival. The answer surprised Elias. Not because it sounded honest, because it sounded rehearsed. Nolan walked toward the fireplace. The estate costs money. You've had money. Not enough. The words came sharper now. Do you think old estates maintain themselves? Taxes rise, insurance rises, repairs rise, staff costs rise. You've received millions and spent millions. Elias studied him. For the first time, Nolan looked tired. Not guilty, tired. The difference mattered. You still haven't answered where she is. Nolan stared into the fire. No. Why? Because I don't know. The answer landed unexpectedly. Not because Elias believed it. Because part of him did. Just enough to create doubt. Nolan turned. If she ran to the cabin, she's hiding. The room went silent. Elias froze. Nolan realized his mistake immediately. Too late. The word had escaped. Cabin. The same cabin from the photograph. The same cabin connected to the ridge. The same cabin connected to the wolves. Elias stepped forward. What cabin? Nolan said nothing. What cabin? Still nothing. The silence became its own confession. Elias felt something shift. Not certainty, but direction. The cabin was real. Nolan knew about it, which meant the photograph wasn't simply old family history. It was part of what was happening now. Hours later, long after Nolan had gone upstairs, Elias sat alone in his father's study. Maps covered the desk. Property records, photographs, legal documents, handwritten notes. The puzzle was finally taking shape, but several pieces remained missing. Most importantly, where exactly was the cabin? A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Elias looked up. Mrs. Bell stood outside the doorway. She looked nervous, almost frightened. "May I come in?" "Of course." She entered carefully and closed the door behind her. Then she removed something from her apron pocket. A key, old brass, worn smooth from years of use. Elias stared at it. "What is that?" Mrs. Bell lowered her voice. "Mrs. Mercer gave it to me." His pulse quickened. "When?" "A month ago." "Why didn't you tell me?" Tears appeared in the older woman's eyes. "Because I was afraid." Elias believed her. The fear wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was the quiet fear of someone who needed a paycheck and had spent months watching power move through a house. Mrs. Bell placed the key on the desk. "She told me if you ever came home, and if she wasn't here, I was to give you this." She said, "Elias will know what to do." The key was for the old hunting cabin, a place his father had built decades ago, deep in the wilderness, long forgotten by everyone but Miriam. Elias grabbed a backpack, filled it with supplies, and headed out into the night. The snow was falling heavily now, erasing tracks almost as soon as they were made. He followed the faint trail he remembered from childhood, the one only his mother would have known. The wolf's trail. Hours passed. The cold bit at his exposed skin. He was beginning to doubt himself when he saw it. A faint glow in the distance, smoke rising from a chimney. The cabin. He approached cautiously, the old brass key heavy in his hand. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open slowly. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm shadows on the rough-hewn walls. And there she was, Miriam. Sitting by the fire, a book in her lap, her hair now completely white, but her eyes as sharp and intelligent as ever. Beside her, curled up on a worn rug, was the gray wolf. Its injured leg was bandaged, and it looked up at Elias with calm, amber eyes. Miriam looked up, a small smile gracing her lips. "Elias, you finally came home." Relief washed over him, so powerful it almost buckled his knees. He rushed to her, embracing her tightly. "Mom, why are you out here? What happened?" She pulled back, her gaze steady. "Nolan tried to force me to sell the ridgeland. He thought I was losing my mind, that I wouldn't fight back. He had me confined, tried to make it look like I'd abandoned everything." She gestured to the wolf. "He tried to take away everything I loved. But the wolves, they remembered my kindness. They led me here, protected me." The next morning, Elias called his attorney again. "We have everything we need. Prepare for a fight." He spent the next few days gathering evidence, speaking to local authorities, and ensuring his mother was safe and comfortable. The story of Miriam Mercer, the wealthy matriarch living in a cabin with wolves to protect her land, quickly spread through the small community and beyond. It became a local legend, then a national news story. The legal battle was intense. Nolan, caught in his web of deceit, tried to deny everything. But the evidence Elias had painstakingly collected, the county records, the attorney letters, the testimony of Mrs. Bell and other former staff, and Miriam's own powerful account, was overwhelming. During the public hearing, Miriam spoke with quiet dignity, recounting how Nolan had manipulated her, isolated her, and tried to steal her land, the very home she had helped build. She described being driven away from the estate after another argument, left with limited supplies, expected to disappear quietly. No one interrupted her. No one could, because the pain in her voice was real, and because everyone in the room knew she had nothing left to gain from lying. When the hearing ended, the judge issued an emergency order freezing the land sale. Further investigation would follow. Additional proceedings would come later. Nothing was fully resolved in a single day. But the most important thing had changed. Miriam's voice had been restored. Outside the courthouse, Nolan tried to approach her. For a moment, Elias stepped forward instinctively, ready to stop him. But Miriam gently touched his arm. Then she faced Nolan herself. Her younger son looked exhausted, defeated, smaller somehow. Not because he had lost money, because he could no longer hide behind power. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Nolan lowered his eyes. "I'm sorry." The words sounded sincere, but they arrived years too late. Miriam nodded once, nothing more. No dramatic speech, no forgiveness, no public reconciliation, just acknowledgement. The consequences would continue. The investigations would continue, and apologies could not erase what had happened. Still, she refused to let hatred become the final chapter of her life. A few weeks later, the estate officially left Nolan's control. Financial records were reviewed. Civil proceedings continued. His reputation suffered. Business partners began distancing themselves. Not because one mistake had ruined him, because the truth revealed a pattern of choices, a pattern that could no longer be ignored. Meanwhile, Miriam made a decision that surprised almost everyone. She refused to move back into the mansion. The reporters didn't understand. Neither did many neighbors. The estate was warm, comfortable, luxurious. The cabin was small, remote, simple. But Miriam had spent enough years being told where she should live. For the first time in a long time, the choice belonged entirely to her. The ridge remained protected. The land sale died permanently. With the help of attorneys, conservation groups, and local supporters, Miriam transformed the property into something new. Part wildlife refuge, part retreat fund for elderly adults who had nowhere else to go during difficult times. The project wasn't built from anger. It was built from purpose. From the belief that people deserve dignity, even after the world stopped paying attention to them. Elias stayed in Montana, not for a week, not for a publicity campaign, for good, at least for now. The decision shocked investors. Board members complained. Several business opportunities disappeared. For the first time in his life, Elias let them go. Every morning he drove supplies to the ridge, repaired fences, attended meetings, learned the names of people his mother cared about. Some days he worked beside her for hours without discussing the past. Other days they talked until sunset. The wounds between them did not vanish. Trust returned slowly, the way real trust always does. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one presence at a time. Months later, during the first snowfall of winter, Elias stood outside the cabin, watching the mountains disappear beneath fresh white snow. The air was cold, quiet, peaceful. Behind him, warm light glowed through the cabin windows. Miriam laughed softly at something Ruth had said inside. The sound carried through the evening air. For a moment, Elias simply listened and realized how close he had come to losing that sound forever. Movement appeared near the tree line. He turned. A gray wolf stood among the pines watching. The same calm amber eyes, the same silent presence. Neither moved, neither needed to. Elias finally understood something his mother had known for years. The wolves had never belonged to her. She had once protected them when others wanted them gone, fed them, helped injured animals survive harsh winters. The generations that followed had remembered, not because they understood human words, because kindness leaves traces, sometimes longer than people expect. The wolf stood there for several more seconds, then quietly disappeared into the forest. The snow continued falling. The mountains remained still, and for the first time since returning home, Elias felt something he had not felt in years: peace.